Sylvester Stallone writes his Oscar acceptance speech 3 years before Rocky gets nominated, when he has $63 in his bank account and no reason to believe he'll ever need it. He folds it carefully, puts it in his wallet next to his last few dollars, carries it like a talisman. 2 weeks later, he gets mugged in Hell's Kitchen. The mugger takes the wallet, finds the speech, reads it, and laughs in Stallone's face before running away. What happens 3 years later, on Oscar night 1977, doesn't just shock Sylvester Stallone. It proves that dreams are contagious, even to criminals. This is the story of how a piece of paper stolen at knife point became a lifeline for two men, how a mugger became a lawyer because of what he stole, and how the most important Oscar speech Sylvester Stallone ever wrote was never delivered because it was too busy saving someone else's life. New York City, October 1973, Thursday night, 9:47 p.m., Hell's Kitchen, West 47th Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue. Not the gentrified Hell's Kitchen of today, the real Hell's Kitchen. The dangerous Hell's Kitchen, the place where muggings aren't occasional, they're inevitable, where walking alone at night is stupid, where carrying anything valuable is asking to lose it. Sylvester Stallone is walking home from a diner where he spent $2.15 on coffee and eggs, trying to make the meal last 3 hours, refilling the coffee until the waitress got annoyed, sitting in the warm booth because his apartment's heat doesn't work and it's cheaper to sit in a diner than freeze at home. The manager finally asked him to leave, politely but firmly. "We need the table." Translation: stop loitering. So Stallone is walking, 9:47 p.m., dark, cold, October wind cutting through his thin jacket. The street is empty. Most people know better than to be out here this late, but Stallone doesn't have a choice. Has to get home. Has to get to the apartment he can barely afford. It's the apartment he's 3 weeks behind on rent for. The apartment that might not be his apartment much longer. He's thinking about money. Always thinking about money. How to get it. How to keep it. How to make $63 last until anything comes through. An acting job. A writing gig. A miracle. $63 in his bank account. $12 in his wallet. That's it. That's everything between him and absolute zero. But there's something else in his wallet. Something he put there 2 weeks ago. Something nobody knows about. Something slightly embarrassing, but also hopeful. Desperately hopeful. An Oscar acceptance speech, written on a piece of notebook paper, folded into quarters, tucked behind the bills. Stallone wrote it on a Tuesday afternoon, when he should have been looking for work, should have been making calls, should have been doing something productive. Instead, he sat at his card table with his typewriter and wrote an Oscar speech. Not because he's delusional, not because he thinks he deserves an Oscar, but because writing it made the dream feel real, made the impossible feel possible, made the future where he's successful, where he matters, where people know his name, feel like it could actually happen. The speech is short, 1 page, maybe 200 words. It starts, "I never thought I'd be standing here. 3 years ago, I was broke, evicted, told I'd never make it, but I refused to believe that failure was my final destination." Stallone has read it maybe 50 times, memorized it, uses it like fuel. When he's rejected from an audition, he reads the speech. When he can't pay rent, he reads the speech. When his father calls to tell him he's wasting his life, he reads the speech. The words remind him, this isn't over. The story isn't finished. Someday, maybe this speech gets delivered. He's thinking about the speech when he hears footsteps behind him. Fast footsteps. Running footsteps. Stallone's body reacts before his brain processes. Adrenaline spike. Heart rate jumps. He starts to turn. Too late. Someone grabs him from behind, arm around his neck. Not choking exactly, just controlling. Stallone is strong. Years of training. Martial arts. Boxing. But the element of surprise takes that away. He's off balance. Vulnerable. A voice in his ear. Young voice. Maybe 20. Maybe younger. Raspy. Aggressive. The voice of someone who's done this before. The voice says, "Don't move. Don't yell. Give me your wallet." Stallone feels something press into his lower back. Could be a knife. Could be a gun. Could be a finger. Doesn't matter. The threat is real enough. This is a mugging. This is a mugging. This is happening. Stallone's mind races, thinking about fighting back. He could probably take this guy. Probably. But probably isn't certainty. And the thing in his back, knife, gun, whatever, changes the equation. Fighting back could get him killed. And for what? $12? The wallet itself? The Oscar speech. That thought hits him hard. The speech, the paper he's been carrying, the dream written down, the thing that's keeping him going. He's about to lose it. The mugger says, again, louder, more aggressive, "Wallet, now." Stallone reaches slowly into his jacket pocket, pulls out the wallet, brown leather, falling apart, held together with duct tape, contains $12 and a dream. He holds it up. The mugger snatches it, releases Stallone, shoves him forward. Stallone stumbles, catches himself, turns around. The mugger is young, black, maybe 19, maybe 20, wearing a dark hoodie, jeans, sneakers. He's not big, maybe 5'10", 160 pounds, thin, looks hungry, looks desperate, looks like someone doing what he has to do to survive, looks like Stallone, in a different circumstance. The mugger backs away, keeping distance, keeping the threat. The thing in his hand is a knife, small knife, pocket knife. Not a gun, but sharp enough, dangerous enough. The mugger opens the wallet, looks inside, counts the bills quickly. His face shows disappointment. $12, that's it. Not even enough for a good meal. Not enough for whatever he needs the money for. Drugs maybe, rent maybe, food maybe. Doesn't matter. It's not enough. The mugger says, "This is it? $12? That's all you got?" Stallone nods. Can't speak. Throat is tight. Adrenaline still coursing. The mugger looks at the wallet again, sees something, pulls it out. The folded paper, the Oscar speech. He unfolds it, holds it up to the street light, reads. Stallone watches, wants to say something, wants to say, "That's mine. Give it back. It's important. You can take the money, but please not that." But he doesn't say anything. Because what's the point? A mugger doesn't care about a piece of paper. A mugger wants money, wants things he can sell, wants something valuable. The Oscar speech has no value, not to anyone, except Stallone. The mugger reads for maybe 30 seconds. His expression changes, confusion at first, then understanding, then something else, something that might be contempt, or might be pity, hard to tell. In the dark, the mugger looks up at Stallone, says, "What the hell is this?" Stallone finds his voice, quiet, defeated. "It's mine. Can I have it back?" The mugger laughs. Not a happy laugh, a mocking laugh. "This is an Oscar speech. You wrote an Oscar acceptance speech." Stallone doesn't respond. The mugger keeps laughing. "Man, you're broke. You got $12. You're getting robbed in Hell's Kitchen at night, and you're carrying around an Oscar speech, like you're gonna win an Oscar, like you're gonna be somebody. Each word is a knife. Each word confirms what Stallone's father said, what casting directors imply, what the world keeps telling him. You're nobody. You'll always be nobody. Stop pretending. The mugger reads part of it out loud, mocking. I never thought I'd be standing here. 3 years ago, I was broke, evicted, told I'd never make it. Man, you are broke. You are evicted probably, and you're not gonna make it. This is pathetic. Stallone feels something break inside. Not anger. Worse than anger. Shame. Deep shame. The shame of having your secret dream exposed and ridiculed. The shame of being mocked for hoping. The shame of being laughed at by someone who's currently robbing you. The mugger folds the paper, puts it in his pocket, along with the wallet, along with the $12, along with everything. Stallone says, desperate now. Please, keep the money. Keep the wallet. Just give me the paper. It's worthless to you. The mugger shakes his head. Nah, I'm keeping it. Gonna show my boys. Gonna tell them about the guy I robbed, who thinks he's gonna win an Oscar someday. They're gonna laugh their asses off. Then the mugger runs, disappears into the dark, into Hell's Kitchen, into the night, gone. Stallone stands there, alone, empty-handed. The street is silent. Nobody saw, nobody cares. Just another mugging in Hell's Kitchen, just another victim, just another story of someone losing something. But what Stallone lost wasn't $12. What he lost was the physical manifestation of his dream, the proof that he believed in something bigger than his current circumstances, the talisman that kept him going. And now it's gone, taken by someone who thinks it's a joke, who's going to show his friends, who's going to laugh about the delusional broke actor who wrote an Oscar speech when he couldn't even afford dinner. Stallone walks home, the rest of the 10 blocks, alone, defeated, empty, gets to his apartment, sits on the mattress on the floor, doesn't turn on the lights, just sits in the dark, and something happens, something shifts. Instead of breaking him completely, the mugging does something else. It makes him angry, really angry, not at the mugger, at himself. Because the mugger was right about one thing, carrying around an Oscar speech when you're broke and failing is pathetic, unless you actually do something about it, unless you stop just dreaming and start executing, unless you turn the speech from fantasy into prophecy. Stallone decides that night he's going to win an Oscar, not because he deserves it, not because it's easy, because a mugger in Hell's Kitchen laughed at him for believing it was possible, and he refuses to let that mugger be right. The next morning, Stallone starts writing Rocky, not thinking about it, not planning it, just writing, pouring everything into it. The anger, the shame, the refusal to quit, the determination to prove everyone wrong, including especially the mugger who stole his speech. 3 years pass. October 1973 to November 1976. Stallone writes, Rocky, refuses $360,000 to let someone else star in it, fights to play the role himself, gets a tiny budget, makes the movie. It premieres, becomes a phenomenon, changes everything. April 1977, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, Los Angeles. The 49th Academy Awards. Rocky is nominated for 10 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Stallone, Best Original Screenplay. Stallone sits in the audience, wearing a tuxedo that actually fits, this time, not borrowed, not thrift store. Custom made. He can afford custom made now. Can afford anything now. Life has changed. Completely changed. In 3.5 years, he went from being mugged in Hell's Kitchen to sitting at the Oscars. Best Picture category. The envelope opens, and the Oscar goes to Rocky. The room explodes. Standing ovation. Stallone goes to the stage with the producers, accepts the Oscar, holds the statue. Heavy, gold, real. This is happening. This is real. But Stallone doesn't have a speech prepared, because the speech he wrote, the real speech, the one from 1973, was stolen, and he never wrote another one. Didn't seem right. The original speech was the one that mattered, the one written when believing seemed stupid, when hoping seemed pathetic. So Stallone speaks from the heart, thanks the cast, thanks the crew, thanks the studio, keeps it short, keeps it humble, doesn't mention the mugger, doesn't mention the mugger, doesn't mention the stolen speech. That's private. That's between him and the universe. The ceremony ends. The after parties begin. Stallone is surrounded by people. Congratulations. Photos, interviews. Everyone wants a piece of the success. Everyone wants to be connected to the phenomenon. Around 1 a.m., Stallone steps outside the party, needs air, needs quiet, needs a moment alone. With the Oscar, with the reality of what just happened. He's standing there when someone approaches, a man, black, late 20s, wearing a suit, nice suit, expensive, tailored. The man is nervous, hands shaking slightly. He stops a few feet from Stallone. The man says, "Mr. Stallone." Stallone turns, doesn't recognize him. "Yes?" The man hesitates, then reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out a piece of paper, folded into quarters. Old paper, worn, stained. The creases are deep from being folded and unfolded hundreds of times. The man holds it out. "This is yours." Stallone takes it, unfolds it slowly, sees his own handwriting, sees the words he wrote in October 1973, sees the Oscar acceptance speech, the one stolen from him 3.5 years ago. Stallone's hands start shaking. He looks up at the man, really looks at him, and recognition hits like lightning. The mugger, the kid who robbed him in Hell's Kitchen, older now, different clothes, different life, but the same person. Stallone's brain doesn't know how to process this. The man who stole from him is here at the Oscars, returning the speech on the night Stallone won. The man sees the recognition, says quickly, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm not here to ask for anything. I needed to return this, and I needed to tell you something." Stallone can't speak, just holds the paper, waits. The man continues, "My name is Marcus Johnson. I robbed you. October 1973, Hell's Kitchen. I took your wallet, took your money, and I took this." Marcus points to the speech. "I read it that night, thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. You were broke, I was robbing you, and you were carrying around an Oscar speech like you were somebody. I laughed, showed my friends. We all laughed, thought you were delusional." Marcus's voice cracks. "But I kept the paper, don't know why. Put it in my own wallet, and I kept reading it. Every day, every single day, and something happened. The more I read it, the more I thought, if this guy can believe in something impossible, maybe I can too." Stallone's eyes are wet. He doesn't interrupt, just listens. Marcus says, "I was a criminal, been robbing people since I was 15. Thought that was my life. thought I was stuck, but your speech, man, it said something about refusing to believe failure was your final destination. And I thought, I'm failing, I'm destroying my life, but maybe it doesn't have to be my final destination. Marcus takes a breath. 2 weeks after I robbed you, I stopped robbing, stopped the drugs, got my GED, applied to community college, got in, studied, transferred to NYU, then law school, graduated last year, passed the bar 3 months ago. I'm a lawyer now, a public defender, helping people who got nobody else. Stallone can barely process this. The mugger became a lawyer because of the Oscar speech. The speech that was stolen became the thing that saved someone's life. Marcus continues, I carried your speech every day for 3.5 years. Read it whenever I wanted to quit, whenever law school was too hard, whenever I thought I couldn't make it. Your words kept me going. I refused to believe failure was my final destination. That line saved my life. Marcus looks at Stallone directly. Tonight I watched you win Best Picture. Watched you go on stage. Watched you go on stage. What, that Oscar? And I realized you did it. You actually did it. The broke guy I robbed in Hell's Kitchen won an Oscar. And if you could do that, then everything you wrote in this speech is true. Dreams aren't delusions. Hope isn't pathetic. Believing is the thing that makes impossible possible. Marcus holds out his hand. I'm sorry I robbed you. I'm sorry I mocked you. And I'm grateful, because stealing this speech changed my life, gave me a future I didn't think I deserved. So thank you for writing it, for believing it, for proving it's true. Stallone takes Marcus's hand, shakes it, can't speak, too overwhelmed, too shocked, too moved. The thing he thought was his lowest moment, the mugging, the theft, the mockery, was actually the beginning of someone else's transformation. Finally, Stallone finds his voice. You kept it for 3.5 years. Marcus nods. Every single day, it's the most important thing I own. Stallone looks at the paper in his hand, the speech he wrote when he had nothing, the speech stolen when he was at his lowest, the speech that saved 2 lives, his own, by making him angry enough to prove the mugger wrong, and Marcus's, by giving him words to believe in when he had no reason to believe. Stallone hands the paper back to Marcus. Marcus looks confused. What? No, this is yours. I'm returning it. Stallone shakes his head. It's not mine anymore. It's yours. You're the one who carried it. You're the one who believed it when I couldn't even protect it. You're the one whose life it changed. So it's yours. Keep it. Marcus's eyes fill with tears. I can't. This is your Oscar speech. Tonight. Stallone interrupts. Tonight I won an Oscar without that speech because I didn't need it anymore. I became the thing I wrote about. But you're still becoming. You're still fighting. You're still proving that failure isn't your final destination. So keep the speech. Let it keep saving you. And when you don't need it anymore, when you're where you're supposed to be, pass it on. Give it to someone else who needs to believe. Keep the chain going. Marcus can't speak. Just nods. Clutches the paper like it's made of gold. Stallone says, what you did that night, robbing me, that wasn't you. That was circumstance. That was survival. But what you did after, going to school, becoming a lawyer, helping people, that's you. That's who you actually are. And I'm proud of you, for real. I'm proud that my speech was part of your journey. Marcus breaks down, fully breaks down. This man who was a criminal, who was lost, who was saved by stolen words, standing outside the Oscars, crying because Sylvester Stallone, the man he robbed, just told him he's proud. They stand there for a long time. Two men, connected by a piece of paper, by words written in desperation and stolen in darkness, and carried in hope and proven true. Finally, Marcus says, "Can I ask you something?" Stallone nods. Marcus says, "In the speech, you said you were going to thank specific people, your mother, your wife, some guy named Joe. Did you, tonight?" Stallone realizes he didn't. The speech he gave tonight was improvised, short, focused on the movie. He didn't follow the script he wrote in 1973. Stallone says, "No, I didn't. Tonight was different. Tonight was about Rocky. But those people, they're still the ones who mattered, still the ones who got me here." Marcus says, "Then the speech isn't finished. You wrote it in 1973. You won in 1977, but you didn't deliver the words you planned. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the speech wasn't meant for tonight. Maybe it was meant for something else." Stallone understands. The speech wasn't for the Academy, wasn't for the cameras, wasn't for the world. It was for Marcus, for the person who needed it most, for the proof that words matter, that belief matters, that writing down your dream, even when it seems stupid, can change lives. They exchange information, promise to stay in touch. Marcus leaves, walks back into his life, a life transformed by stolen words. Stallone stays outside for another hour, holding the Oscar, thinking about the journey, about the mugging, about the speech, about Marcus, about how the worst moment became the catalyst for two transformations, how loss became gain, how theft became gift. Years pass. Stallone and Marcus stay connected, not close friends, but connected. Marcus sends a letter every year on October 1973, the anniversary of the mugging. The letter always says the same thing: still carrying the speech, still believing, still becoming. Thank you. In 1995, Marcus becomes a judge, criminal court, Brooklyn. He sends Stallone a photo, Marcus in his robes, holding a gavel. On the desk in front of him, in a frame, the Oscar speech, still creased, still worn, still carried. The inscription on the frame, the words that saved my life, October 1973. My life forever. Thank you, Sylvester Stallone. In 2011, Marcus retires, 38 years after the mugging. He calls Stallone, asks to meet. They meet at a diner in Hell's Kitchen, not far from where the mugging happened. Marcus, now in his 60s, brings the speech, still in the frame, still preserved. He puts it on the table. Marcus says, "I'm ready to pass it on, like you said, when I don't need it anymore. Give it to someone else." Stallone says, "You sure?" Marcus nods. "I don't need it to believe anymore. I am the proof. I'm the evidence that it works. So it's time to give it to someone who's where I was in 1973, someone who needs to read these words, someone who needs permission to believe." They decide together. Marcus knows a kid, 18 years old, caught stealing, facing charges. Smart kid, capable kid, just lost, just making bad decisions because he doesn't see another option. Marcus gives him the speech, tells him the story, the whole story, the mugging, the theft, the mockery, the decision to change, the years of carrying, the transformation, the life built on belief. The kid reads it, tears form. He says, "This is real." Marcus says, "This is real. And if it worked for me, it can work for you." But you have to believe. You have to refuse to let failure be your final destination. You have to fight. The kid fights, gets a deal. Community service instead of jail. Gets his diploma. Goes to college. Studies engineering. Graduates. Gets a job. Builds a life. 10 years later, 2021, that kid, now a man, now an engineer, creates a foundation, helps at-risk youth, gives them resources, mentorship, hope. The foundation's logo is a simple piece of folded paper. The tagline, "Refuse to believe failure is your final destination." Stallone gets invited to the opening. So does Marcus. They're both there. Two old men now, connected by a mugging. In 1973, connected by a speech, connected by proof that words have power. At the ceremony, the kid, now a man named Daniel, gives a speech, tells the whole story. The Oscar speech, written in poverty, stolen in violence, carried in hope, passed on in generosity, used as fuel by 3 generations of people who needed permission to believe. Daniel says, "This piece of paper has changed hundreds of lives, maybe thousands, not because it's magic, because it's truth." Someone wrote down their dream when they had every reason to quit. Someone stole it and let it change them. Someone passed it on, and now it's a movement, a reminder, a promise. You are not your worst moment. You are not your circumstances. You are what you refuse to stop becoming. The audience stands, applauds, not because the speech is eloquent, because it's true, because everyone in that room knows what it's like to need permission to hope, to need proof that transformation is possible, to need someone to say, "Keep going." Stallone sits next to Marcus, 2 old men, survivor and thief, dreamer and believer, connected forever by October 1973, by Hell's Kitchen, by $12 and a dream. Stallone whispers to Marcus, "You know what's funny?" Marcus says, "What?" Stallone says, "I won the Oscar, got the career, got everything I wrote about in that speech. But you got something better. You got transformation, real transformation, from who you were to who you became. That's bigger than any Oscar." Marcus says, "We both got transformation. You became the actor. I became the believer. And together we proved the speech was true, not just for us, for everyone." They sit in silence. 2 men, 1 piece of paper, 48 years of ripples. The Oscar speech Sylvester Stallone wrote in October 1973 was never delivered at the Academy Awards, but it was delivered to everyone who needed it. Delivered to Marcus, delivered to Daniel, delivered to hundreds of kids who came through that foundation, delivered to anyone who's ever needed proof that belief matters. The speech still exists, still gets passed on, still saves lives. Not because Sylvester Stallone won an Oscar, because he wrote down hope when hope seemed stupid and someone stole it. And that theft became a gift, and that gift keeps giving. What dream are you carrying that seems too big? What hope are you hiding because people might laugh? What Oscar speech are you writing in the dark when logic says quit? Write it anyway. Carry it anyway. Believe it anyway. Because you never know who needs to steal it, who needs to read it, who needs permission to become something they don't think they deserve to be. Stallone's speech was stolen at knife point in Hell's Kitchen and saved a life, saved many lives, proved that dreams aren't delusions, they're contagious, even to criminals, especially to criminals, to anyone desperate enough to believe. October 1973, a mugging, a theft, A mockery. April 1977. An Oscar. A return. A transformation. 48 years. Hundreds of lives. One piece of paper. That's not robbery. That's legacy.